name is Keith Nolan. I'm the Vice President of Partner Growth and Management here at ProBridge and Trellance. I have been very fortunate to have spent my entire career in the credit union movement, having worked at organizations such as Visa, PSCU, which is now Valera, NAFQ, Prime Alliance, and FIS. And in all of those opportunities, I've been in a client facing position, whether that be account management or business development. All right, so that's enough about me. I would like to introduce or have Bill and Charlie introduce themselves. So, Bill, if you don't mind, let's start with you.
Sure thing, Keith. Bill Platt, VP of Enterprise Data and Analytics here at Mission Fed. I've been here for 17 years. I actually started as their lead data warehouse architect, so I have a background in data engineering and analytics. 17 years here and then 8 years at Citibank, so I've got about 25 years of financial experience. Specific to data warehousing and technology, I've been about 22 years. I've also worked in some other startups and an airline, Spirit Airlines, for a couple of years. So happy to
Wow.
be here. I've been kind of managing this partnership with Trellance and ProBridge for about 3.5 years now. I was actually part of the selection process to bring them on board. So hoping to share some insights there for everybody.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Charlie?
Hi, everyone. Name is Charlie Hoadley. I'm Enterprise Reporting and Analytics Manager at Mission Fed. I have a little over 20 years experience in IT. I've worn many hats. Mostly, the majority of my work's been done with Microsoft SQL Server, database development, and then database administration. And then worked my way into a lot of the business intelligence side within the Microsoft stack. But also, I've worked as a Windows admin or servers admin for Nokia. And then also in the insurance industry as a business intelligence developer. And now I'm back in the banking industry. I've been at Mission Fed for over 3 years now. Actually started at Mission Fed earlier in my career as a DBA, but I came back to the banking world and back at Mission Fed. So,
Thank you. Both very impressive backgrounds. Thanks, guys. Let me set the table for today's conversation. So, while it seems like 100 years ago, COVID wasn't that long ago. And pre-COVID, most credit unions had on their to-do list the mobile experience and digitizing the credit union's offerings. And then COVID hit and essentially literally brought the world to a stop. And we all, as consumers, we all were very much introduced to the Amazon effect of the point and click, and things happen. They happen efficiently, they happen effectively, they happen securely. Post COVID, that was the expectation that members had of their credit unions and their financial institutions. If Amazon can do it, why can't you do it? Well, as we all know, it's not as easy delivering a package to someone. It's not as easy delivering financial services as it is delivering a package to someone's doorstep. So compounding that challenge was the speed of market requirement. As we all know, fintechs were trying to disintermediate credit unions from their members. So today, what we're going to talk about with Mission Fed is how they address this challenge by partnering with ProBridge. Through this partnership, they've been able to deliver on these initiatives by having a strong methodology to manage projects, using both internal and external resources. This approach has allowed them to deliver the necessary technical projects on time, managing their technology costs without sacrificing quality. So with that background, let's get to it. Bill, let me start with you. First question. Would you please share with us the challenges or capacity gaps that led Mission Fed to consider offshore development as a solution?
Sure thing, Keith. So our big gap, and this is about 3.5 years ago when we started our partnership, was data science. So we had a really good, strong foundation, strong data platform, really good descriptive analytics, but we didn't have a data science function. So we actually went out to the market and we're looking for partners in that space. And we kind of did a mini evaluation, or RFP, if you will. And Trellens basically became the front runner of that. So we started with the offshore team in that regards with a professional services engagement for a one-time build of some predictive models. And the models we landed on were the product propensity models. So we had a cycle in which we built all that stuff out with Burgesh and the offshore team there in India to kind of help us understand, what we could accomplish with data science and see what the appetite was for the credit union to embark on that. It was very successful, and that actually led us to stand up a data science function and hire for that. So we do have one data scientist on staff now. We're looking to kind of extend that over time. But through that partnership on the data science, it was so successful that we ended up partially through that engagement extending into staff augmentation. We had some changes in staff due to a team member that was retiring. And since the professional services on the project were working so well, we actually looked and went into staff augmentation to get a full-time employee that could actually sit in the team because of that retirement. And I think that's one of the parts we really appreciated about the partnership was the flexibility, right? We could, stand up a use case and kind of create a project for that and work through and agree upon a set cost for that project, or we could do like staff augmentation and get flexibility there and actually bring someone onto the team. And I think that part was super beneficial for us at that point in time because it allowed us to bring on a new member of the team pretty quickly without going through the hiring process out in the market and doing that onboarding. So that was really beneficial. And we already had the system set up for the offshore to come into the environment through our BOMGAR and stuff like that. So getting that person up to speed was really quick, and that flexibility and the engagement was super key for us.
Excellent. Charlie, anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, just like what Bill said, with flexibility, with our resources, I think typically within the technology space, when you're working on projects, sometimes you have to go across, disciplines,
Yep.
and work in different spaces of technology. And just having that cross-functional type resource that's been available to us has been very key with us being so flexible.
Excellent. Thank you. Were there specific qualities or capabilities that were most important to you when selecting an offshore partner for Mission Fed?
There was in that selection process, we had some key decision factors, and I think there we had five, but a few that were really key was really that flexibility, scalability, adaptability of the partnership, which we just kind of touched on. And for me, that was actually the key foundation. But also for us, credit union knowledge and expertise there, and kind of how a business is represented through the credit union space is very beneficial. And with you guys kind of being a QSO, that was helpful for us because we knew you were embedded into the credit union industry. We knew you understood the credit union space. We knew your teams understood the systems that our
Right.
teams deal with and other credit unions deal with, and that was a big piece. And of course, cost always comes into play. That was another one of our decision factors. Not the biggest one, but something we have to consider, of course, when we're going to do an engagement. I won't touch on the other two because those three are really the core foundation of where the Trellens ProBridge team kind of bubbled to the top of the selection process.
How many, can you talk a little bit about the internal process on how you evaluated that external talent and, how many people were involved with that? Was it more of your team or your group's decision, or did you have to go across different lines of business and have them weigh in and provide you input?
I'd say our team was the main driver, but we did have business representatives, especially on the marketing and finance side, depending on which kind of models we were looking at. So there was partnership there. There was also partnership within our executive team in the selection process. Largely, the IT team ran that RFP and evaluation,
Okay.
and it's probably similar to what other credit unions are doing. We start with a big pool of candidates.
Yeah.
We had probably 8 to 10 or 12 different vendors we were looking at, and we tried to quickly pare that down into a smaller chunk. And I think we pared that down to about three that we looked into very deeply.
Yeah.
Three that we did a bigger deep dive into. We're having additional meetings and conversations, exchanging information with an NDA and stuff like that to really understand their offering comparative to our needs as a business. So we did a deep dive with three of them, and then we essentially did an objective scoring on our decision factors of which vendor we thought was the clear winner for each of those and why. So we have a whole sheet for each decision factor, a bunch of data and context about each of them in regards to that, and a reasoning behind why we think this vendor is better than this vendor in this particular piece. And essentially, when you have, say, five decision factors, it's just a scoring method of who gets the highest score. And that's our selection process of partnership, really. That's how we ended up with Trellance because the scoring was much higher than the other candidates for the selection.
So it sounds like it was a really deep dive on your part. Approximately how long did it take from beginning to end to reach that decision?
Probably about 3 months, if I had to guess. This is four
Okay.
years ago, so it's been
Yeah.
a bit. But yeah, it was a lot of back and forth. Not that we're working every day on it for 3 months, but just
Right.
scheduling the conversations and getting the information. Yeah, we probably spent 3 or 4 months on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about cost optimization and the operational impact. So, um, can you talk a little bit about how offshore staffing helped Mission Fed manage your technology costs and more efficiently, or manage those costs more efficiently without sacrificing quality?
Well, I think resource optimization is big here, and it kind of is partly around that flexibility. The business is constantly changing. Our demand kind of moves with that. If
Yep.
we're doing a big system conversion or we've got some other big project, we need to really figure out how to optimize resources. And the flexibility and the engagement kind of helps us do that and do so in a way in which is cost effective. So we've had a few projects where we just needed more resources and we needed them temporarily, maybe for 4 months or 6 months or 8 months. We've also needed resources because we've had changes in the team, like someone leaving us, as an example.
Yep.
So we've been able to kind of quickly spin up resources as needed in those instances, bring on an additional resource for 4 months, 6 months, or 8 months. And then, as we onboard a new member of the team or the project work slows down, we can adjust in the other direction. And that's been very valuable to kind of manage that cost part. But I think efficiency is a big play here as well, too, with the offshore resources of allowing us to more efficiently deliver value to the business quicker. And what I've seen there is that internal resources often get tied up with the day-to-day minutia, you know, system issues,
Yep.
meetings, operational impacts, like just all kind of training, whatever the case might be, just different pieces there where the offshore resources seem to be able to focus on nothing but development and project work. And I think that extended period of focus time really allows project work to move more efficiently and more quickly. And we've seen a lot of value gain there from that perspective. Charlie, what else have you seen there in regards to kind of managing pieces?
Yeah, just we're always continuing to maintain our goal to, not have our offshore resources replace our local talent. But just, being able to have a resource for a quick hire. I'm going through the hiring process now, and it's a little bit more extensive. It takes a lot of time and effort. And so having resources available that we can quickly onboard and get onto our team. That's what I've noticed. The biggest benefit is, pretty in short time, we can have a resource off and running with working on on any sort of project that might be urgent that our local resources couldn't take on at the time.
So this question will relate to that. So beyond the cost savings, what kind of improvements have you guys seen as it relates to projects and speed to market, reducing the backlog, or just the throughput of the project itself?
Yeah, I think one big piece to mention here in regards to that question, Keith, is kind of research and development, some R&D stuff. And Charlie and I were talking about this in preparation for some stuff we'll share later in regards to our Power BI refresh. But it's really hard for internal resources to focus on, technical debt and building out new technology. With the Power BI refresh that we'll cover later and showcase, there's different ways to handle that, and it takes a lot of R&D to figure out which of those methods are going to plug into the environment best. And having Gunjan and the offshore team has really helped us with that and allowing some bandwidth to focus on that. As far as backlog, I wouldn't say we see a reduction because as other data teams are probably seeing, we're seeing a spike in demand. So,
Yeah,
but there's just I could hire another 5 people, and I feel like the backlog would just keep increasing. But what I'd say there in regards to the backlog is we're maintaining a healthy state because of the offshore. Without them, we'd probably be underwater a bit and
yeah,
drowning, which wouldn't really be good for the team. So they're really helping us, with that flexibility and that resource optimization and efficiency I mentioned to really keep a healthy backlog and ensure that our team's not getting overburdened by something that's just growing so large that it just, I don't know, causes us stress there. So that part's good. Um, Speed to market, that goes back to some of the efficiencies we talked about, I think, and having the resources, having more focus and being able to actually move through project work a little bit quickly or more quickly than internal resources. So we've been able to deliver value quickly to the business very effectively with the offshore resources. And that's been very, very, very beneficial.
all right. Could be somewhat of a sensitive question, but I will ask it anyway. So it focuses on trust, communication, collaboration. Any challenges that you or your team encountered related to communication or cultural fit? And if you did have some challenges, how did you address them?
Not so much. And I think it really depends somewhat on the resources. And I think in regards to the resources, I think it depends on both internal and external resources. So what I mean by internal is like how does that credit union work through language barriers and things of that nature and
Right.
communication struggles? Because you're going to face that. Like for myself, I've done a lot of traveling. I've been all through Mexico, Central America, South America, Europe. I've been in situations where I had to talk to people through Google Translate, or before Google Translate, you just had to use pictures and point inside. I've learned
Right.
patience through that and different ways in which I can communicate to get, what's needed. But with the external resources, we really haven't had too much of that. We've had Gunjan here for 3.5 years with us, and
Yeah.
he's been a strong anchor for us. We haven't had a lot of communication struggles. We've had needs sometimes to maybe explain things in different ways or think about our communication style of, hey, I know we talked a lot about something on the call and it was really complex. Let me summarize that in an email, some screenshots,
Yeah.
allowing for some digestion there, which I think is kind of helpful. As we've spun up additional resources, had a few who you could tell their English wasn't as good.
Yeah.
But in that, we did have Gunjan to kind of help us with translation and stuff like that. But I think even if he wasn't there, we'd figure it out. Back
Yeah.
to, my experience of travel, I just think you need to have an open mind and be patient there and figure out ways in which you can communicate that works for both partners. Um, I think more of the challenge really isn't the cultural fit, it's the time zone, which I know for us being Pacific Standard Time is a little bit of
Yeah.
because we're 12 and a half to 13 hours, 13 and a half hours, depending on the time of year. So that does present some challenges with like synchronizing as a team and where the offshore can't really sit with the team. So they're kind of on a silo a little bit there. And, we have to kind of meet with them and kind of work through different parts. We've got that pretty well dialed in, but it does mean that we have to kind of do that early, so that we don't have to have Gunjan trying to join us at 1 o'clock in the morning. We don't want to create
Yeah.
experience that's, not, you know, good for him. So we do meet 3 times a week at 7:15 in the morning Pacific time, which is, essentially either 7:45 or 8:45 p.m. his time.
So give on both sides. I know what you're saying.
On
We
both
have
sides. Yep.
we're 9 hours here, and folks have been great about getting on a call, but it might be 9 p.m. their time, and I said, how do you work through that? And they said, look, that's just part of what we know we have to do based on the time zone. There's really no way of getting around it, and they're willing to make that adjustment. So that part's great. Charlie,
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
you would
We've
add
tried
to
to
what?
accommodate and
Yep.
and the team there has been very accommodating too with time. I think if we came back and said, "Hey, can we do 8 o'clock?" That wouldn't be a problem. So
Yeah.
that's good.
Charlie,
Charlie, do
anything
you have anything
you'd
else to
add to
add?
what
Because
Bill said?
I know you're dealing with this a lot more than I am sometimes.
Yeah, and the time zone again, I always feel like it's a give or take on both sides. It's a balancing, and I think the way that we've set it up, where there's some flexibility on both sides works well. But also at the same time, as long as, yeah, I've found that, when you're sending over project requirements, you don't have to get so detailed where you're sending over a cookbook of instructions. Ever since we've gone into Agile, which I know we're potentially could be covering that later, but Agile has opened up the door for us to use user stories and acceptance criteria following the Gherkin format. And so that format allows, I believe, a good requirements being sent over on expectations for any project. So that communication is always the most important because that's what helps, keep projects on track and then delivered in a timely fashion.
Excellent. Can you provide an example of a project with that had offshore support that had a direct impact on the member experience or on your guys' operational efficiency?
Oh, we could provide hundreds, Keith. But
All right.
I got a few I really, really like. Let me pull up a slide for the one. Hopefully you can see on my screen the Power BI model refresh. So this was kind of one of the first initiatives we worked on with the offshore, and we had two resources on the ProBridge side for that, and then one internal resource on our side. Charlie's near and dear to it, so I'll let him talk to the nuances of it, and what benefit it gave us.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite projects because I know this is an issue within the Power BI community all across. Maybe Microsoft has come up with something lately. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it, but I know that when I talk to other colleagues that work with Power BI, one of the pain points is having your semantic model dynamically refresh after a data warehouse load. And so currently right now, Power BI has a scheduler set up where you can schedule your semantic models to refresh, but it doesn't really know when your data warehouse is completed processing. And so in the past, what we had to do was disable one of our logins and then enable it once our refresh completed. And then our scheduled refreshes would either fail or succeed based on that. If they failed, we'd have to remember to go back and then manually refresh each one of our semantic models. So that was a little bit of a pain point. And so this solution was definitely a quality of life improvement for us. And one of the number one takeaways, is working with different areas of discipline, as I mentioned before. So this solution not only, has some SQL Server involved, which would most of our team understands and knows how to work with, but a PowerShell script that fires off commandlets or connects to the API for Power BI through a commandlet. So basically, what we built within SQL Server is the metadata and log tables. We set up a table that has the priority of data set run. So we don't want to kick off every one of our data sets all at once to overload our local server. So we've set a configuration based on priority in SQL Server. And then the PowerShell script, like I mentioned, that connects to the API, to the workspace within Power BI. But the SQL Server log tables help execute that call out to the API once each data set refresh completes. So that's at a high level of how it works. But this is it dynamically refreshes our data warehouse now automatically based on having awareness now of when our load completes.
Charlie, can you expand a little bit on how working with the team over in India, what kind of was their role in helping you roll this out? Just giving you more resources, more time to get the project accomplished, hit the goals?
Yeah, so they're able to do a lot of R&D they have the time to do R&D to figure out what solution would work best for us.
Okay.
And so they were actually able to come back without our guidance, really, without our influence here on coming up with the solution. So this is something that they provided back to us, and then when we were able to test the solution, we knew right away that this would work well.
Awesome.
Yeah, so they did all of the development. Our side really was responsible for unit testing, validating it's going to meet our expectations, kind of building that to production and stuff like that. So this was a lot of work done by the offshore to make this happen.
Excellent.
Another item we can showcase here is our SQL Server migration. This is something we worked on about 2 years ago, and we had internal resources and external. So we had three on our side and two employees on the ProBridge side. And this is actually one of the projects we spun up an additional resource for because we knew it was going to be a big work effort. But our data warehousing dates back, like over 20 years ago. We've been doing this for a long time. So we had
Wow.
basically a monolithic physical server. We've had several of those, but about 7 or 8 years ago, our SAN wasn't quite ready for virtualization of the warehouse because it's so big that we went forward with a physical, and that physical was getting near end of life, both for operating system and SQL Server. And we wanted to modernize that and virtualize it. So we worked on kind of a physical to virtual move. We worked on not only moving operating system versions in SQL, but also refactoring a lot of the processes and workload, as you can see here on the screen, basically splitting up our environment into three virtualized servers. One where we have our main piece. We also have some like web and application and hybrid systems. So we had a server just for that. And then we have some cold storage needs where we want to keep data for a long retention period, like 10 years. And we don't want that to be on our main warehouse because it's not accessed very often. So we created a server for that. And then we wanted to kind of refactor our file storage because everything was on that monolithic server, like the databases, the file storage, the everything. Like we did everything there. So we wanted to split out the file storage into something separate. And the offshore talent was super, super involved in this project. And it was a multi-month project. It was a very, very big effort. And you can see kind of some of the work efforts here that were involved. Not only were we doing some of the system conversion, we were also refactoring a lot of how the system functions to kind of unravel some of the bad architecture principles of having it on one server. So that's kind of what you see here of us changing our file storage to moving from like a folder here, like export files where every system is underneath it, and import files where every system is underneath it, to essentially having a folder structure on a file storage per each system, which will allow us to move that system anywhere we choose. We can move it to another virtual, we can move it to different file storage. We can move that file storage eventually to cloud, which is our play later coming up, hopefully. And then we unwound some bad architecture principles where we had a lot of the kind of environment switching in our source code. You can kind of see that here where we say, hey, if we're dev, then this is the setting. If we're production, we're this setting. We moved all that into configuration. And that was actually a very, very large undertaking. So we not only wanted to, virtualize things, we wanted to modernize our platform to be a little more robust. And the offshore team was super helpful in that system migration. And then they were also very, very helpful with our code repo migration, which is shown here. We had initially Team Foundation Services 2015 on premise, and our project tool was Monday, but that really wasn't working well for us. We wanted to get into Azure DevOps so we could do our work item management, sprint stuff inside the tool that's fully robust and integrated into the development cycle. And part of that work to do so was to get our repo off of TFS 2015 and over to Azure DevOps. And this is another one of those R&D parts, really, that Charlie talked about with the part around Power BI refreshes. Like doing this conversion was very cumbersome. It took a while, and our team just really wasn't positioned to be able to focus on that. So we had the offshore resource help us with getting a migration strategy in place to get that repo off of the on-premise in TFS 2015 and convert it over to Azure DevOps. And that's where we are now. We've got a repo in Azure DevOps. We've got all our boards in Azure DevOps for work. And we're looking to even modernize that further with CI/CD and test plans and stuff like that. So those are some big wins we've had that have been very beneficial to our team, our credit union, our members, our internal business partners.
So let me make a statement, and you guys validate it or not. You all are a big credit union, right? I think 6 billion, give or take.
We're almost 7. I looked at our dashboard, we're at
All right,
6.2. We're getting there.
even better. So, but I guess my position would be, look at the size of the credit union really shouldn't drive whether or not you decide to utilize offshore resources or not. I think it's all relative to what you're trying to do, what you've been asked to do as a credit union, what you've been asked to deliver. And if you don't have the resources, and let's face it, most credit unions are challenged for resources. There is help out there. Obviously, we are one of those solutions. But would you guys agree with that statement? Whether you're almost 7 billion or 700 million, there is an opportunity here for offshore to help you in the development of your IT projects.
Yeah, 100%. I think you might manage that partnership a little bit differently than us. And we can kind of maybe here cover how we support things with our agile process and our team. So it might look different if you're a small credit union where those developers are basically your only IT team.
Yep.
At the end of the day, really, it just comes down to how you're going to, give that partnership the right structure and attention it needs. And at the end of the day, that really comes down to kind of work item management and ensuring that you're giving good requirements and that you're able to be available to answer questions or have the offshore team available to meet with the business partners in that regard. So your structure might look a little bit different if you're smaller, but at the end of the day, you're going to have some internal team to manage
Yep.
different facets of it. But the most important facet is that you've got really good work item management and that you've got work efforts that are really thought through and kind of scoped and have appropriate requirements that can be given to talent offshore because it's going to be hard otherwise. So if you're able to do that part of it and give that the attention it needs, I think it's going to be successful. Another thing I would say there too is, and we did this initially with the engagement, is start with something small when it comes to projects. Don't throw some big complex
Yeah.
item at the offshore team. Start with a small effort and build from that.
That's excellent advice. How are you seeing going forward for Mission Fed specifically? How do you see the offshore partnerships supporting your longer term goals? It sounds like you're this is working, you're only going to look to expand and get this really to be possibly more involved and more integral into what you guys are trying to achieve?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's more to come here, and I think we're going to scale back up again at some point. Cloud's the big one.
Yeah.
Charlie's, we'll let him cover that part because he loves the cloud. Not that I don't. I love the cloud too, but
Go
Charlie,
ahead,
why don't you
Joe.
talk about ways in which we're looking to use the offshore for our modernization?
Yeah, just again going back to the R&D, our current local team here, we're focused on delivering to the business on current projects, and it's definitely going to be very beneficial to us to have someone from ProBridge to help us with our vision, and help us make that decision on what cloud solution we want to go with. And as we do our own research on different cloud solutions, to have an extra resource available, to at least run things by and then start doing some R&D is going to be very beneficial to the team, because we can, of course, bring that work back to our team and share, the direction on where we're going with cloud. And so I'm definitely very excited and anxious to start working more with, cloud technologies. But I have, confidence that we'll have the right team, with Bill, our local architect, and then our offshore resource.
And I think there's two other areas too that we're constantly doing and will continue. And whether or not they need scaling, I'm not sure, but a big part of what we have offshore doing is helping us with augmenting our Power BI environment, our semantic models. We're doing a lot of development to extend the features in that. So there's continuing development in that area. We're also, as a business, kind of under this kind of mass core conversion, where we're getting rid of a lot of legacy core systems that we have and moving to more modernized platforms. And ProBridge has been a big partner in that. We just did a huge conversion last year from Finastra Servicing Director for real estate lending, for the servicing over to ICE MSP. And we had to
Okay.
refactor large chunks of our warehouse, and pipe that data in and refactor a bunch of processes. And we used a lot of offshore resources for that. And we're still undergoing that. We're getting a new LOS this year. We're getting a new digital platform. We just went through a phone system migration, and we've got more stuff like that. And that core conversion activity is going to continue, and having the resources to help there is very beneficial.
Yeah, I that is significant lift there. So that's great that you have that ability to leverage those resources. Couple more questions for you guys. What would be your biggest piece of advice for a credit union? It doesn't really matter the size, to start thinking about using a global delivery model, to actually, start considering offshoring some of what they are currently doing internally.
Some of that is that ensuring you have the right structure and attention to the engagement, and making sure you have that internal team that can support that. And if not, thinking about that ahead of time and how to build that out. So that's, I think, a big part of evaluating offshore talent and partnership. You've got to be prepared for that part. I do think there's a part in which you need to understand your risk appetite too,
Yeah.
and address that part internally. Like, what systems and data do you want them to have access to, and what level of autonomy do you want the team to have, and things like that? What guardrails are you going to put around that? Um, Not that that's any different than internal teams, because I think about the same with internal resources too. But you want to make sure you're thinking about those parts of the partnership too, and kind of preparing for that.
Okay. Um, are there any, as you guys evaluate the projects, and are there any projects that you kind of say these are all internal projects and these are projects that we'll consider Offshoring, you've been partnering with us for now 3.5 years, or all projects just what makes the best sense?
I wouldn't say we cherry pick, but there are some systems where we don't have change often that we won't
Okay,
assign to the offshore resources, more because it's really not worth the onboarding efforts. So any system where we see a lot of change, I have no issue throwing that over and
okay,
getting on it. And if I was in a pinch, I think the resources are so good that I could throw anything over if it's, if we've scoped it well. So I'm not hesitant in any regards in that realm.
excellent. Charlie, anything you'd add to Bill's comments?
Yeah, I'd say having, just a really good plan in place, planning for the future, and really understanding, anticipating what projects coming up could be a good fit for starting out, an offshore resource with. I know Bill mentioned start small with projects, but really, and then of course, how that offshore developer will fit into your regular, executing work or Scrum process as you see, here. Being able to, fit them in into your regular workflow, I think is key. And also, having, the other team members help support the software development lifecycle, for example, when work items are getting completed, just being able to fit that in with capacity.
Yeah, and here's a slide that kind of shows that full team and how the offshore fits in.
Yeah, thank you.
They're fully supported by an entire Scrum team here. So we've got myself and a product owner. It's kind of working with the business on vision. We've got a Scrum Master and business analyst that's working on requirements and scoping, and then technical management and development team that's kind of assisting in various different ways to make sure the program's successful. Like I said, you don't have to operate this. We're a little bigger, so we've got a more refined team there, a bigger team. But you could do this if even this whole developer part was offshore. You just got to make sure you have the other parts to kind of manage the work and prepare the work.
Understood. Cassie, before I wrap up, are there any additional questions that have come in for Bill or Charlie?
Yeah, so I would say to the audience, for everybody listening, I know, we're kind of heading towards the end here. If you guys do have any questions you would like to ask Charlie or Bill, feel free to please put them in the Q&A box. But Keith, as people maybe start typing, I have a quick question just from me, to kind
Yeah.
of start us off. And I guess with, hearing everything you guys are talking about, how would a credit union evaluate whether their project is a good fit for offshore support?
I think they're all good fits. If I can have an internal developer work on it, why not a person that's external that has exposure to the same systems and teams? Kind of going back to that I mentioned before, we're just we're not fearful of assigning out anything to the offshore. Um, I think if it's in the first 3 to 6 months of the engagement, you might need to like have some onboarding there to make sure. But yeah, I think once you're up and running, it can really be anything you need help with. So I go back to how well refined are the requirements, how well is the work understood. That's really what should dictate whether or not I think the offshore is a good resource. If you're not sure of what you're working on and like certain of the direction of it, then you're going to have to do some internal work to kind of do enablement, do some research, and kind of develop that out a bit further. I think that part of the process can be very hard for offshore because of the time change.
Right.
Unless maybe you're East Coast and you can have the offshore meet with the business to gather requirements and better understand it. But if it's refined and well known and documented, it should be good to go. It should be able to turn that over and kind of work back and forth through that process.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. Yeah, while you were answering that, we do have one coming in. Somebody's asking how you got your team to buy into this out of all your discussions. How did you get the final okay?
I don't know if that really ever came up. I just feel like it just naturally happened. I don't know. Charlie sits with the team a little more in retros and stuff like that, so maybe he has perspective. But I don't recall any pushback at all ever. To me, I just feel like Gunjan's part of our family and our team. I don't see him any different. I don't think anyone else sees it any different.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that.
and I mentioned that before. We have, a strong culture of as Gunjan is just, he's another team member, not someone to take away work from. That's for sure.
I
So
love that.
anytime that Gunjan's and we've also had Gunjan help us a lot with certain work items where there might be questions and some back and forth with code reviews and it's we're more and more starting to work Gunjan into our kind of full circle SDLC process.
Yeah, so he's just viewed as essentially a remote employee.
That's right.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
have other remote employees on the team too. So
Right. Yeah. Just
yeah,
so he just has a bigger time difference. That's all.
yeah. I think the only struggle with him in the team dynamics is that he doesn't get to sit in on all the ceremonies, and a lot of the
Yeah.
team, aside from Charlie and I, don't work with him directly. So it's more communication through Teams or email and stuff like that. So from his perspective, he might feel different. Like he might not feel like he's part of the team culture as much because he's not having that interaction. But from the team's perspective, I don't think they really see it any different. Because a lot
Excellent.
of what needs to happen in the relationship building and the back and forth conversations Charlie and I take, and then the team really intakes refining work and code review for him and unit testing for him and production builds and stuff like that. So
Awesome. Well, I don't see any more questions coming through, Keith. If anybody does have
Okay.
another question, please still feel free to type it in. But Keith, I'll let you take your conclusion away.
All right. Thank you. And thank Bill and Charlie. Thank you guys very much for your time, your input, your expertise. Very much appreciated, as is our partnership. And I was thinking that the timing of today's webinar, it comes at a very pivotal moment when you, for the credit union movement, when you think of the following. I'm going to take people down a trip down memory lane for a second. So at its peak in 1970, which I'm sure is long before a lot of people on this call were born, there were 24,000 credit unions in this country. Right? That's huge. And those 24,000 credit unions had 11 million members. So go to March month end of this year. We're down to 4,400 credit unions. So the Debbie Downer is like, oh, that's almost an 80% reduction. True statement. However, let's look at the flip side, and the positive is we now have 143 million people, members of those 4,400 credit unions. That's over a 1,200% increase. So I look at this as tremendous opportunity for the credit unions versus looking at the glass half full. So couple that fact, right, with the most Americans ever belonging to credit unions with the fact that we are in the greatest wealth transition in the history of this country. From the boomers, I count, to the millennials, to the Gen Zs, that number is a staggering $84 trillion and is estimated to go through 2045. So the conclusion I hope that everyone realizes, and why credit unions are looking to partner with companies, is credit unions need to have a sense of urgency to capture those wealth transition dollars and keep them in the credit union system. Right? And that means you have to do business differently. You have to want to be that leading financial institution for the millennials, for the Gen Zs, and embrace and deliver on their vision of what's valuable for a financial institution. It can't be what's attracted baby boomers. We all have to shift and adjust moving forward. So hopefully that if you walk away with one thing, it is that today. So as you can see from today's presentation, ProBridge is providing you viable options to extend your team's capacity and productivity through reliable onshore and offshore resources. You don't have to do it all yourself. And a strategic partnership with a talent company like ProBridge can help you get to your goals faster. ProBridge is a wholly owned subsidiary of Trellance. This is a credit union cooperative that's been serving the industry for going on 35 years. Our other companies, Rise Analytics and Optiri. For a further understanding of Optiri, they provide cloud, security, disaster recovery, and business continuity solutions to credit unions. So we welcome the opportunity to discuss one or multiple opportunities or solutions or challenges that you're experiencing. So I will turn it over to Cassie, and we thank you for the privilege of your time today.